You probably think you are hard to manipulate. You trust your logic. You trust how sharp you are. You like to believe that if someone tried to play you, you would see it coming. That belief is the first thing that gets used against you. Intelligence does not protect you from manipulation. It only gives you better excuses for why you walked straight into it. Your brain runs on shortcuts, fast guesses, automatic reactions. Those shortcuts work most of the time, which is why you rarely notice them. Manipulators do. They do not need to outsmart you. They just need to pull the right lever before your thinking even starts. In this video, you are going to see 10 of those levers: anchors, contrasts, labels, scarcity, social proof. Every tactic is already wired into how your mind works. You feel like you are choosing. In reality, your choices are being edited before you ever see them. By the end, you will not be immune. No one is. But you will become a very bad target. Because once you see the handles on your own mind, it becomes much harder for anyone else to grab them. 1. Anchoring. The first number owns your mind. Tversky and Kahneman ran a simple experiment. They spun a wheel with random numbers on it in front of people. The number that came up was clearly arbitrary. It had nothing to do with the question that followed. Then they asked those people to estimate the percentage of African countries in the United Nations. When the wheel showed a high number, people gave higher estimates. When it showed a low number, people gave lower estimates. The random number, which everyone knew was unrelated, quietly pulled their answers in its direction. This is anchoring. The first number you see creates a starting point in your mind. Even when you try to correct for it, you almost never correct enough. The first number keeps its grip. Now bring this into real life. A salesperson tells you the original price was $500, but today it is $250. Your brain does not ask if 500 was real or invented. It simply takes 500 as the anchor and judges everything from there. 250 now feels like a bargain, even if the item is actually worth 80. A recruiter asks for your salary expectations and casually mentions that people in this role usually make around $120K. That number walks into your mind and sits down. When they later offer $105K, it feels lower but still acceptable because you are anchored inside the range they planted. A coach tells you that clients usually pay $5K for private access, but you seem serious, so they can do it for $3K. The size of the discount distracts you from the real question: is the service even worth $3K in the first place? The dangerous part for intelligent people is this: smart minds trust their ability to adjust. When they hear a number, they think, "I will not be fooled. I will reason my way to a fair value." But research shows that even when people are directly warned about anchoring, they still stay too close to the first number. Awareness alone does not cut the rope. The first number does not just float in your head. It shifts your entire sense of what is normal and what is extreme. For a smart person, this becomes a trap inside a trap. They think they are being rational because they are negotiating against the anchor. They feel in control. They feel like they are pushing back. They do not notice that whoever set the first number still owns the battlefield. Anchoring is not always obvious. It is not just a price tag. It shows up as an industry standards. You hear that most consultants charge $200 an hour, so you feel guilty charging $80, even if your skill does not yet justify more. It shows up as average results. A fitness program tells you that clients typically lose 10 kilos in 3 months. That number becomes your expectation, your yardstick, your quiet judge. If you lose 6, you feel like you failed, even if 6 was actually a healthy, strong result for your body. It shows up in relationships. A partner tells you that most people put up with far worse, so your current situation feels more acceptable than it really is. That story becomes the anchor for what you believe is tolerable. Anchors also appear in job offers, investments, and even moral debates. Whoever speaks first and throws a number into the air is not just talking, they are planting. People argue about salary raises starting from the current number. They argue about reasonable hours starting from what the boss casually describes as normal. They argue about fairness starting from whatever benchmark was mentioned first. You can see how this plays out in negotiations. The side that opens high or low has already pulled the center toward their side. The conversation stays inside their frame, and the final outcome, even after back and forth, usually lands closer to their anchor than to reality. So what is the countermove? You cannot stop your brain from being anchored, but you can reset the baseline on purpose. Before reacting to any number, pause and ask, if I had never heard that figure, what would I think is fair based on independent facts? Do not trust the internal feeling of fairness, because that feeling is already contaminated. Go outside. Look for reference points that have nothing to do with what this person just told you. What do similar products or services cost in other places? What did you yourself want before hearing their number? What would you pay if you had to decide after a day without their voice in your ear? That pause is not comfortable. It feels slower and less exciting. That is exactly why manipulators try to keep you inside their numbers and their timing. A practical move is to set your own anchors before you walk into any situation where numbers will appear. Before talking salary, decide privately, what is my minimum, what is my target, and what data supports that? Before browsing an offer, decide, how much money can I actually afford to lose here? Then, when the other side throws out a large figure, you can see it for what it is, not a fact about reality, but a magnet trying to pull your expectations. You still feel it, but you are not owned by it. If someone is proud of the massive discount they are offering, ask the hard question they want you to ignore. Compared to what? If the 19 original price was never real, the discount is a trick painted on air. At its core, anchoring is about control of the first impression. If the first number that hits your brain comes from them, they start the game already winning. The way out is simple, but not easy. Either bring your own numbers to the table, or delay judgment until you have numbers that do not come from the person trying to convince you. You are not stupid when you fall for anchoring. You are human. The mistake is believing that your intelligence alone is enough to shake off the first number. It is not. You need a deliberate reset every time. 2. The contrast principle. How extremes make bad deals look reasonable. Your brain almost never judges things in isolation. It judges them by comparison. A room feels warm after standing in the cold, and cold after standing in the heat. The same volume of sound can feel loud or quiet, depending on what came before. This is not just about senses. It is about value, risk, and fairness. Cialdini and other researchers have shown that when you present people with an extreme option first, the second option feels safer, cheaper, or more acceptable, even if in absolute terms it is not that great. This is the contrast principle. The first item is not there to be chosen. It is there to twist the way the second item feels. Watch how this looks in sales. A real estate agent shows you a terrible, overpriced house first. It is dark, cramped, and clearly not worth the price. Then they take you to the next house, which is also too expensive, but slightly better. Suddenly, the second house feels like a relief. Same thing with clothes. You are handed a jacket for $800. You reject it instantly. Then you see another for $400. $400 is still high, but compared to $800, it feels like a smart, moderate choice. In reality, your judgment is not based on market value. It is based on the artificial range they created in your mind. Manipulators love the luxury decoy. In pricing, this shows up as 3 options: a very expensive premium choice, a middle choice, and a cheap basic one that is clearly missing important features. The real goal is to push you toward the middle. It feels balanced. It feels reasonable. It feels like you are not overspending or underinvesting. But the middle is only attractive because the other two were designed to make it look that way. You feel like you are choosing freely, but your range was set for you. There might be a better offer outside that range, but you never saw it, so your brain never considers it. The contrast principle shows up in relationships too. A partner behaves badly, then does something slightly less bad and calls it progress. After constant yelling, a week of only cold silence seems like improvement. A boss who usually overloads you gives you a slightly smaller pile of work and expects gratitude. The new treatment feels kind compared to the old, but if you step back and compare it to a healthy standard, it is still not right. That is the quiet danger. Contrast can make you grateful for conditions that would have shocked you if they had been offered first. Intelligent people fall into this trap because they trust comparisons. They think, I am just weighing options. But they forget to ask, who chose these options? Both paths laid out in front of you can be bad, yet feel different in a way that makes the less bad choice feel almost good. You might think you are being rational by choosing the lesser evil. You do not notice that accepting the scale itself was the first loss. This happens in negotiations all the time. Someone gives you an insulting first offer, then concedes to a slightly less insulting second offer. You feel like you won something. You did not. You were pulled from terrible to bad and told it was a victory. The online world runs on contrast as well. A fake 9 original price beside the sale price. A dramatic before photo next to a carefully chosen after. A risky investment shown next to a clearly insane one, so the risky choice feels responsible. Even in political and social debates, you are often presented with two extreme positions and pushed toward the middle, which just so happens to benefit whoever set up the contrast. When someone says, it could be worse, or people have it so much harder elsewhere, they are not talking about facts. They are reframing your current pain against a more extreme reference, hoping you will lower your standards. The countermove against contrast is to bring in a third comparison, reality outside the frame. Do not just compare option A to option B. Compare both to a separate benchmark that the other person did not hand you. Before going into a purchase or agreement, set your own criteria. What does a good deal actually look like for you? Based on facts, not feelings. What is the zero option of doing nothing right now? If neither offer beats your independent standard, then both are bad, no matter how different they look from each other. The courage here is to be willing to walk away from a choice that feels like the only path, simply because both ends of it were built to control you. Another move is to ask, if I had seen this second option first, without the extreme one before it, how would it feel? Imagine you walk straight into the second house, or see only the 400 jacket. Would it still seem reasonable, or would it feel overpriced and average? When you mentally remove the decoy, your sense of value often shifts suddenly. That shift tells you the truth. Your judgment was not as solid as it felt. It was hanging off a fake extreme someone showed you 5 minutes ago. In personal life, notice anytime you hear phrases like "at least" or "it is not as bad as." Those phrases are contrast spells. They tie your emotions to something worse, so you stop asking for what is actually fair. Yes, someone else might have it worse. That does not mean your situation is acceptable. Compare your reality to your values, not to someone else's suffering. Market rates, expert opinions, your earlier standards before you got worn down. Those are cleaner points of comparison than whatever is in front of you right now. Smart people are especially easy to manage with contrast because they enjoy thinking in ranges and trade-offs. They like to weigh pros and cons. That skill becomes a weakness when the options have been pre-arranged. The mind moves inside that little box and feels clever for choosing the best item in it. The real power move is not choosing the best item. It is questioning the box. When you learn to step back and ask, compared to what, on every offer and every appeal to your gratitude, you stop being the customer who is thrilled to pay $400 for a jacket that was never worth more than $60. You stop being the partner who feels lucky that the anger has dropped from screaming to constant irritation. You stop being the employee who calls a slightly smaller workload generous. You stop judging your life only against the extremes someone else chose for you. 3. Placebo expectation. When stories rewrite your sensations. Doctors used to believe the placebo effect was just people pretending to feel better. Then researchers like Fabrizio Benedetti started measuring what actually happens in the body. In many studies, patients are given a pill that has no active drug at all. They are told it is a real painkiller or a strong medicine. After taking it, their pain drops. Their brain scans change. Their bodies release real chemicals, like endorphins, that reduce pain. The only thing that changed was the story they were told. The expectation of relief did not just change their opinion, it changed their actual experience and their biology. This is the power of placebo expectation. What you are told to expect can quietly edit what you feel. You can see the same thing outside hospitals. People are given 2 glasses of the same wine. They are told that one costs a few dollars and the other costs a lot. Over and over, people report that the expensive wine tastes richer and better, even though it is identical. Brain scans show more activity in reward areas when people think the wine is expensive. The label and the price do not just change their thoughts, they change the way the taste is processed in the brain. The same happens with branded painkillers versus generic ones, premium coffee versus regular, or high-end headphones versus mid-range ones. People are often convinced they feel a difference that only exists in the story, not in the product. Manipulators in business, politics, and even personal life understand this, at least on a gut level. They know that if they can control the story you hear before you experience something, they can bend your sensations and judgments. Labels like exclusive, elite, handcrafted, scientifically formulated, or next level are not just decoration. They are suggestions aimed straight at your nervous system. When you hear that something is high-end, your brain gets ready to feel satisfied. When you are told you are about to try a life-changing program, your mind starts scanning for change. Small, normal shifts get magnified and relabeled as proof that the promise is real. Intelligent people are highly at risk here for a simple reason. They trust their inner experience. They have trained themselves to listen to their feelings, their tastes, and their personal sense of this works or this does not. That is usually a strength, but with placebo expectation it turns into a trap. When a product, person, or method comes wrapped in powerful stories, and then they feel something, they assume the story must be true. They say, "I can feel the difference." They rarely ask, "Would I still feel this if I had no idea about the label, the brand, or the price?" They mix up "it feels good" with "it is good." And those are not the same thing. This is why testimonials and case studies are so heavily used. Before you ever touch the product, you see people crying with gratitude, talking about how their life was transformed. Influencers say that they finally found the thing that fixed everything. Photos show glowing skin, perfect bodies, happy couples. All of this is designed to load your brain with expectations. When you finally try it, your mind is not a blank slate. It is already full of predictions. This will work. I will feel better. This is special. Your brain then hunts for any small sign that matches those predictions and turns the volume up on that signal. Any doubt or lack of effect gets turned down or ignored. Placebo expectation is also used in authority signals. A person with a fancy title, a blue checkmark, or a polished brand logo is more likely to be believed. If a doctor in a white coat says something will help, the same treatment works better than if a random person says it. Part of this is trust, but part of it is pure expectation. Your brain has learned that expert-looking people bring real solutions. Manipulators copy this look on purpose. Expensive suits, dramatic stage lighting, professional websites, and complex language all serve as labels that say, "This is important, this is effective." By the time the real content arrives, you are already half convinced. This does not only apply to products and experts, it happens in relationships as well. Imagine someone new is introduced to you as brilliant, kind, or extremely successful. Your brain expects to see these traits, so it notices every small hint that fits and brushes aside signs that do not. The first story becomes the lens. If a friend says, "This person is trouble," your mind will tilt the other way and notice more negatives. The person did not change. Your expectation did. That expectation can make a charming person seem magical, or a normal misunderstanding feel like a massive red flag. So what is the countermove? You cannot turn off expectation, but you can test it. The core question to ask yourself is this: if I knew nothing about the brand, the price, the hype, or the person telling me this, how would it actually feel? Try to strip away labels in your mind. When you drink that premium coffee, imagine it came from a plain, cheap machine. Does it still taste amazing, or just okay? When you sit in a luxury car, imagine you never saw the logo on the steering wheel. How does the ride really feel? When you use a high-priced skincare product, ask yourself honestly, if this came in a plain, generic bottle, would I still feel this impressed? Whenever possible, create blind tests for yourself. If you can, compare unknown products side by side without knowing which is which. Many people are shocked to find that their favorite expensive items Do not beat cheaper ones when brands are hidden. You can do this with wine, coffee, chocolate, headphones, even teachers or coaches. Listen to ideas without knowing who said them, then check later. Often the most impressive voice looks less special when the label is removed. This habit protects your mind from being dragged around by price tags and marketing stories. In personal development, placebo expectation is everywhere. Courses promise to rewire your brain. Coaches say they can collapse years into weeks. Spiritual leaders promise instant peace. If you walk in believing the story, the first small moments of calm or insight will feel gigantic. You will tell yourself, this is it, this is proof, that feeling is real. But it might not be coming from their method. It might be coming from your own hope and your decision to pay attention. That does not mean all methods are fake. It does mean you should separate the effect of your expectation from the effect of the tool itself. A practical move is to delay long-term judgment. When something feels amazing at first, instead of instantly declaring it life-changing, make a quiet rule. I will see how this holds up over time. Ask yourself after a week, a month, and 3 months. Is this still helping? Or was it mostly the excitement and the story? If the effect fades fast as the hype wears off, that is a sign that expectation was a big part of the feeling. Good tools may still feel good later, even when the shine is gone. Finally, notice when you catch yourself defending a purchase or experience just because admitting it was mostly placebo would hurt your pride. The smarter someone is, and the more money or status they put into something, the harder it becomes to admit, I got carried away by the story. The mind starts building complicated justifications for a choice that was mostly emotional. This is where intelligence stops helping and starts lying for you. The antidote is humility. It is okay to say, I enjoyed this because I believed in it, but that does not mean it is as powerful as advertised. You do not have to hate something to see that the story around it is exaggerated. Placebo expectation shows how deep manipulation can go. It does not just change your thoughts. It can change your sensations, your moods, even your body chemistry. That is why labels, stories, and authority symbols are so heavily used. They are not extra, they are the main event. When you learn to mentally strip those away, to test your experience without the costume, you take back a large amount of control. You will still feel the pull of a strong story. You will still sometimes want to believe, but you will also have a quiet voice inside that asks, if everything around this were plain and nameless, how would it really feel? That question is your guardrail. 4. Emotional labeling. Owning your feelings before you do. There is a simple but powerful effect in the brain called affect labeling. Researchers like Matthew Lieberman found that when people put their feelings into words, the intensity of those feelings often goes down. In brain scans, the emotional centers calm a little, and the thinking areas light up more. Just saying something like, I feel angry, or I feel nervous, can help create a small gap between you and the emotion. That gap can make it easier to think clearly, instead of just reacting. This sounds helpful, and it can be, but it also opens a door for manipulation, because there is a hidden question beneath it. Who gets to choose the words for what you feel? Manipulators use emotional labeling as a tool to steer you from the inside out. They do not wait for you to describe your state. They do it for you, out loud, with confidence. They say things like, you are overwhelmed, I get it. Or, you are excited about this, I can hear it in your voice. Or, you are scared to miss out, and that is totally normal. The moment you nod along, their words start to become your reality. Once a feeling is named, your brain begins to search for proof that matches the label. If someone says, you are anxious about this decision, your mind starts scanning your body for signs of anxiety, even if you were mostly calm a minute ago. Their label becomes your lens. This tactic works especially well on intelligent people, because they usually value self-awareness. They like having language for their inner life. They read about emotions, attachment styles, and personality types. They want to understand themselves. So when someone offers them a neat, sharp description of what they are feeling, it can feel like insight. It can feel like growth. They rarely stop to ask, is this actually my word, or did I just borrow it from this person because it sounds smart and caring? They mix up guided labeling with honest reflection. Over time, they may drift far from their real feelings while believing they are becoming more aware. Consider how this plays out in a sales conversation. A good closer does not just say, "This product is great." They say, "You are probably feeling a bit stuck where you are right now, and that is frustrating." They tell you that you are hopeful, that you are tired of missing chances, that you are nervous about staying small. Each label is an invitation to agree. When you accept those words, you start to feel exactly what makes you most likely to buy. If you question the offer, they may say, "I can hear a lot of fear in what you are saying." That line turns your careful thinking into a sign of weakness in their story. Now, to prove to yourself that you are not ruled by fear, you may push aside your doubts and buy anyway. In relationships, emotional labeling can be even more dangerous. A controlling partner might say, "You are just being sensitive," or "You are overreacting," long before you have processed your feelings. If you accept this, you start to doubt your own reactions. You feel wrong for being hurt or upset. Over time, you may learn to see yourself through their words, calling your valid anger drama or your sadness neediness, because that is how they keep naming it. On the other side, love bombers might say, "I can tell you are already falling for me," or "You feel so safe with me, do not you?" These labels push you to match the script they are selling. If you value connection and honesty, you may rush to live up to that image. Emotional labeling is also common in leadership and politics. A manager might say to a team, "You are all worried about change, but deep down you know this is best." The manager has just split the group into a worried surface and a knowing deeper part, both defined by them. If people speak up against the plan, they can be accused of being stuck in fear. If they go along, they are praised for being in touch with their deeper wisdom. In political speeches, leaders say things like, "You are angry," "You are tired of being ignored," "You are afraid of what is happening." They are not just describing, they are shaping how listeners interpret their vague unease. The trick in all of this is that emotional labels are sticky. Once you accept a label, it tends to stay. It sneaks into your self-talk. You start saying, "I am someone who gets overwhelmed," or "I am just scared of commitment," not realizing that those lines came from someone else who needed you to believe them. Language becomes a cage. The smaller your emotional vocabulary, the easier it is for others to fill it for you, putting their interests inside the words you use about yourself. So how do you defend against this? The core move is simple. Claim the right to name your own feelings before anyone else does. When someone offers you an emotional label, pause inside your head and ask, "What am I actually feeling?" in my own words. Do not rush to answer them out loud. Check in with your body and your thoughts. Are you truly excited, or are you more curious, pressured, or unsure? Are you really afraid, or are you cautious because something feels off? There is a big difference. Different labels lead to different actions. Excited pushes you to jump. Pressured pushes you to slow down. Notice, especially when someone uses emotional language right before asking you to do something. If a salesperson tells you, "You are thrilled about this," right? Catch that. They are not just observing. They are steering you towards saying yes. Instead of swallowing it, you can calmly correct it. "Actually, I am still deciding," or "Actually, I have mixed feelings." These small corrections are powerful. They stop the other person from building their argument on a false picture of your state. In close relationships, treat outside labels as suggestions, not as truth. When a partner says, "You are overreacting," you can mentally translate that to, "They see me as overreacting." That is their view, not a fact. Then ask yourself, if a kind, neutral person saw this situation, how might they describe my reaction? Maybe it is strong but fair. Maybe it is softer than it should be. The point is to let more than one possible label exist in your mind, instead of letting the loudest voice decide. It also helps to grow your own emotional vocabulary. If the only words you have for discomfort are stressed or anxious, you are too easy to steer. Many different states get poured into those two buckets. Try to notice more specific feelings: disappointed, rushed, cornered, hopeful, skeptical, bored, lonely, curious. The more precise you can be, the harder it is for someone to shove a lazy, convenient label over your experience and use it as a handle. Finally, Watch out for anyone who constantly tells you how you feel, especially when their labels always push you toward choices that benefit them. A healthy person might gently ask, "Are you feeling upset?" Or say, "It seems like you might be tired." They allow you to confirm, reject, or change the word. A manipulator talks as if they already know. "You are just scared. You are being irrational. You know you want this." They do not leave space for your version. That is the red flag. They are not helping you understand yourself. They are trying to own your inner world by getting there first with the right words. Emotional labeling itself is not bad. Naming your feelings in your own way can be one of the strongest tools for staying grounded and clear. The danger begins when you forget that the label is yours to choose. If you give up that choice, other people will happily choose for you, and those choices will rarely be in your favor. By pausing, checking in, and finding your own language first, you keep the keys to your emotional life in your own hands, instead of handing them to anyone who sounds confident enough to narrate your mood. 5. Scarcity. Hijacking your inner survival alarm. Scarcity is one of the fastest ways to shut down clear thinking. In simple terms, when something feels rare or about to disappear, its value in your mind shoots up. Robert Cialdini and many behavioral economists have shown that when people believe there is not enough of something, they take more risks, rush decisions, and ignore downsides they would normally care about. Brain studies show that under scarcity conditions, arousal and urgency rise. Your body moves into a kind of alert mode, similar to danger. That made sense in the past, when missing food or shelter could be a real threat. Today, that same survival alarm gets triggered by countdown timers on a website and fake "only 3 spots left" warnings. Marketers and manipulators know this works, and they lean on it hard. You have seen the tricks. A page screams, "Sale ends in 12 minutes," while a little clock runs down. A course says there are only a few places left, even though it is an online product that could accept thousands. A coach claims that prices will never be this low again, or that this is the last chance to join this year. Airlines show only 1 seat left at this price in bright red. E-commerce sites flash "selling fast" next to ordinary items. These messages are not just sharing information. They are trying to light up the part of you that is afraid of losing a chance, so you act first and think later. This same move shows up in personal and work situations. A boss might say, "If you do not take this project, someone else will, and you will miss your chance to shine." A romantic partner might say, "I cannot wait forever. You need to decide now if you want this." A friend offering a business opportunity insists that the window is closing, that smart people are already in, and that hesitating means you will be left behind. The goal is always the same: replace calm evaluation with a spike of fear that sounds like, "If I do not move right now, I will lose something important." The root of this is deep in human history. In ancestral environments, scarcity often meant real danger. If there was limited food or water, waiting too long could be deadly. Grabbing what was available quickly and without a long debate was sometimes the best survival move. Our brains still carry that wiring. They do not check if the scarcity is real or fake before reacting. The simple message matters most: not enough, almost gone. The result is a powerful emotional push that cares more about not losing than about what is actually being gained. This is why intelligent people are not safe from scarcity pressure. They might fully understand that some offers are using a tactic. They might even roll their eyes at obvious countdowns. But knowing does not always stop the feeling. The inner alarm still goes off. You notice your heart rate change, your thoughts speeding up, your attention narrowing to the choice in front of you. The mind starts building fast justifications for why acting now makes sense. You stop asking, "Is this good?" and start asking, "Will I regret it if I miss it?" Your intelligence shifts from judge to lawyer, arguing in favor of what your fear already wants. Manipulative scarcity often has a few common signs. The deadline is very close and not clearly explained. The limitation seems arbitrary, like an online course that somehow has only 5 seats. The story focuses more on what you will miss than on what you actually get. Phrases like "never again," "last chance," "only a few insiders," or "doors close forever" are used to create drama. Sometimes there is also social proof mixed in, such as spots are flying or people are fighting to get in, even if there is no evidence of this. The whole frame is, act now or suffer for it later. In relationships, scarcity can be used in darker ways. A person might say, "No one else will love you like I do," or "You will not find someone better than me," trying to convince you that good partners are rare and that you should accept bad treatment to avoid being alone. A workplace might claim that jobs in your field are almost impossible to find, so you should be grateful and stay loyal even when they treat you poorly. By painting alternatives as scarce or hopeless, they trap you into thinking your current situation is the only realistic choice. So what can you do about this? You probably cannot stop the first wave of scarcity feelings. The rush is automatic. The real skill is to spot that rush and refuse to let it make the decision for you. A useful question to ask in your mind is very direct. If this were available next week at the same terms, would I still want it? Sit with that. Imagine the urgency gone. Imagine the timer at 0, but the offer still there. Does the product, job, or relationship still make sense on its own, without the pressure? If your desire drops sharply when you take away the last chance feeling, that means scarcity was carrying most of the weight. Another strong move is to separate the value from the timing. Ask yourself 2 questions. First, ignoring all deadlines. Is this actually good for me at this price, in this form, with these people? Second, if it is good, do I truly need to decide right now? Many things are nice to have but not worth rushing for. It is rare that a single moment decides your entire future, no matter how much someone insists. When you step back and see that life holds many possible paths, the threat of "miss this and you are doomed" loses a lot of power. It also helps to check the logic of the scarcity claim itself. Is there a clear reason why this thing is limited? Physical seats in a small room are limited. A handmade product with a fixed number of items is limited. Time on a calendar can be limited. But digital products, generic courses, and broad promises about only taking a few people are often just marketing stories. If the limit is real, the person should be able to explain it in simple, honest terms. If they get vague, shift the topic, or attack you for asking, that is a sign that the scarcity is more about control than reality. You can also create your own rule about pressured decisions. Many people find it helpful to adopt something like this. I do not make significant decisions under deadlines I did not set. That does not mean you never move quickly. It means that if someone else is forcing the speed, you slow down on purpose. Even taking a short break, like walking around the block or sleeping on it overnight, can give your brain time to come down from the survival state and let calmer thinking return. In personal life, notice when you start telling yourself scarcity stories. Thoughts like, "I will never get an offer this good again," or "There are no good people left," or "This is my only chance," might feel dramatic and true, but they are usually just fear in disguise. Ask yourself, how do I actually know that? Often the answer is, you do not. You are just repeating a story you heard from someone who benefits if you cling to them, or to this deal. The aim is not to become cold or unexcited. Scarcity can sometimes point to real opportunities that will pass, but your goal is to choose from value, not from panic. When you train yourself to pause, question the urgency, and imagine the same offer without the ticking clock, you give your intelligence time to wake up. The survival alarm might still ring in the background, but it will not be the one holding your hand over the yes button. SISU, social proof, how crowds replace your judgment. When most people think of manipulation, they imagine a single clever person trying to trick them. But very often, the thing that bends your choices is not a person, it is a crowd. Social proof is the name for this force. It describes how you decide what is true, safe, or good, based on what others seem to believe or do. Solomon Asch showed this clearly in his famous conformity experiments. In a simple test, people sat in a group and were asked to match the length of lines on cards. The answer was obvious. When people were alone, they almost always got it right. But when everyone else in the group was secretly told to give the wrong answer, many participants went along with the group, even when their own eyes disagreed. They later said they did not want to stand out or risk being seen as foolish. Their need to fit in overpowered what they clearly saw, This is not just about peer pressure in school. The same basic pull shows up in adults, experts, and leaders. Your brain reads the behavior of others as a signal of what is likely true or safe. If many people are doing something, part of you thinks, they cannot all be wrong. This reaction had survival value in the past. If everyone suddenly ran from a predator, it made sense to run as well, even without clear proof. But that same instinct now responds to follower counts, views, likes, and long lines outside shops. It often does not check if the crowd is wise or simply loud. Modern life is full of engineered social proof. Online platforms display numbers everywhere. Subscribers, likes, shares, reviews, ratings, products show 5-star scores, videos show millions of views, courses brag about thousands of students. Influencers stand in front of audiences or sit on panels to signal that they are in demand. These signals are not neutral. They are designed to make you feel that a person or thing is safe, popular, and therefore probably good. You may tell yourself that you are judging the content, but those numbers and images often tilt your feelings before you even start thinking. Intelligent people are especially vulnerable to this in a subtle way. They do not just follow crowds because they want to fit in. Instead, they tell themselves a different story. If so many people are into this, there must be something there. They assume that the group has discovered information they do not know. Popularity becomes a kind of hidden evidence. They think they are being rational by treating mass interest as data. The problem is that crowds can form around almost anything. Hype, fear, boredom, and clever marketing can all create big numbers without real quality underneath. Manipulators know how to fake or inflate social proof. Follower counts can be bought. Likes and comments can be generated by bots or paid groups. Testimonials can be written by the company itself or by people who got rewards for saying nice things. Photos of crowded events can be staged or taken at flattering angles. A leader inside a company can manufacture consensus by only inviting loyal voices into meetings, then present that staged agreement as proof that everyone is on board. Phrases like "everyone in the industry is doing this" or "all high performers use this tool" are often said without any solid backing. Think about how you choose places to eat or things to watch. A restaurant with a long line outside looks more attractive than an empty one. A movie with everyone talking about it feels more interesting than one you have never heard of. Apps labeled trending or most downloaded feel safer to try. None of this is crazy. There is often some link between popularity and value. But the danger begins when you stop asking your own questions and let the crowd answer for you. The more you lean on social proof, the less you notice your own judgment going quiet. This does not just affect buying choices, it shapes beliefs and morals. If your social circle all praises a certain guru, coach, or thinker, you are more likely to see that person as deep or wise, even if their ideas are shallow when read alone. If everyone at work supports a policy, you may hesitate to say this seems off, even when something feels wrong. Online, when a take gets thousands of supportive comments, it can feel risky to ask basic challenging questions. The weight of social proof pushes your mind towards silence and agreement. The Ash experiments showed something important about this. Many people who went along with the group later admitted that they knew the answer was wrong. They conformed anyway to avoid standing out. That same quiet fear exists in adults who pride themselves on independent thinking. Being smart does not erase the human need for belonging. In fact, intelligent people often tie their identity to being in the know. If a large group appears to know something, it can feel threatening to stand apart and risk being labeled ignorant or stubborn. So what can you do about social proof without pretending it does not exist? The first move is to create what you might call the solitary test. Ask yourself, if no one else existed and these numbers were hidden, would I still choose this? Imagine you are the only person on Earth looking at this product, idea, or person, with 0 reviews, no likes, no audience. Does it still make sense? Does it still feel interesting or worthwhile? Try this when you see a viral post or a wildly popular course. Cover the metrics with your hand or scroll so you cannot see them. Then read or watch a small sample and ask, if a random stranger sent this to me privately, would I be impressed? Another strong habit is to go looking for dissent before joining a crowd. When something has a wall of praise around it, deliberately search for thoughtful criticism. Look for reviews that give 3 stars instead of 5, and read what they say. Seek out people who left the program, the job, or the group, and ask why. If all you can find are shallow haters or no criticism at all, that can be a red flag in itself. Healthy ideas and products can stand up to honest doubt. Manipulative systems often try to silence or bury opposing voices so that the social proof stays shiny and untouched. Inside companies and friend groups, pay attention to how agreement forms. If everyone seems to fall in line very fast, or if the same few people always speak first and set the tone, pause, ask yourself, do I actually agree, or am I just drifting with the group? It is okay to say, I want to think about this, even when the room is nodding. That small act of slowing down can give others permission to question as well. Often, more people are unsure than you think, but they are also watching the crowd and staying silent. It is also helpful to notice your own emotional reaction to big numbers and praise storms. Do you feel safer, more excited, more afraid of missing out when you see that something is popular? Just admitting, I feel pulled because everyone seems into this, weakens the pull. Your emotions stop pretending to be pure logic. You can then ask, does popularity matter here as much as I feel it does? For a social platform, maybe yes. For a medical decision or a long-term life choice, maybe not. Finally, watch for people who lean too hard on social proof instead of offering clear value. If someone constantly talks about how many followers they have, how many students they have helped, or how many big names trust them, but struggles to explain plainly what they do and how it helps, that is a warning sign. They may be trying to sell you the crowd instead of the content. A solid offer can be described in simple language that makes sense, even if you had never heard of the person before. Social proof is not your enemy by itself. It is a useful hint in many situations, but it becomes dark psychology when it is faked, exaggerated, or used to silence your own sense of truth. The goal is not to become a rebel who automatically rejects anything popular. The goal is to remember that crowds do not carry your responsibility. At the end of the day, you live with your choices, not the people who clicked like. When you practice the solitary test, seek out dissent, and listen carefully to your own quiet doubts, you let social proof be one small voice among many, instead of the voice that drowns out the rest. Consistency pressure. When your past traps your future. Humans do not just make choices, they build stories about themselves. I am the kind of person who keeps promises. I am loyal. I am disciplined. I am not a quitter. These stories can be helpful. They guide behavior and create stability, but they can also be turned against you. Robert Cialdini called this the consistency principle. Once you commit to something, especially in public, you feel strong pressure to act in ways that match that commitment. Leon Festinger, with his theory of cognitive dissonance, showed that people feel deep discomfort when their actions and beliefs do not match. To reduce that discomfort, they change either the action or the belief. Manipulators know this and aim straight at your need to look and feel consistent. Friedman and Fraser ran a classic study that showed how small commitments create big changes. They first asked homeowners to put a tiny, polite sign in their window supporting safe driving. Most people agreed. It was easy and harmless. Later, the same homeowners were asked to place a huge, ugly sign on their lawn with the same message. People who had agreed to the small request were far more likely to accept the big one, compared to those who had never done anything. The tiny first step was not about the sign. It was about identity. Once someone saw themselves as the kind of person who supports safe driving, saying no to a bigger request felt like breaking that new self-image. This is the foot in the door technique. Get a small yes, then slowly raise the stakes. You see it in sales when someone asks for your email just to send a free guide, then asks for a small payment, then a bigger one, always tying it to your earlier choice. You see it in toxic relationships, where small boundary crossings happen first. An off comment, a small lie, a little disrespect. You let it slide, because you have already decided, this person is good. Later, when the behavior gets worse, walking away feels harder because it clashes with your earlier decision to stay and believe in them. Intelligent people are prime targets for this, because they often have strong identities tied to values like loyalty, rational thinking, and keeping their word. They take pride in following through. They hate the idea of being called a hypocrite. That pride becomes a leash. A manipulator only needs to get them to say yes to a small label or action that can later be turned into a rule. For example, a salesperson might start with, "You care about your future, right?" Almost everyone will agree. Later, when they push a risky investment, they can say, "Earlier you said you care about your future." Backing out now can feel like admitting you do not. This pressure shows up in work too. A manager may ask, "Can you help with this small task, just this once?" You agree, because you want to be a team player. Soon that one favor becomes an expectation. When you try to push back, they say, "But you have always been reliable," or "You are not the kind of person who lets the team down." Now saying no does not feel like a simple choice about your time. It feels like betraying your own image as reliable and helpful. Many high performers end up exhausted because they cannot stand to act against the labels they have accepted. Social movements and group ideologies use consistency pressure as well. First, you agree with a simple, widely accepted statement, like "everyone deserves respect." Then more extreme ideas are quietly tied to that basic belief. If you question those later, you may be told, "But you said you care about respect. Are you going back on that now?" Your early agreement becomes a trap. It is not that the first belief was bad. It is that it gets used as a tool to push you into positions you never actually chose with full awareness. The mind also has a way of rewriting the past to protect consistency. Suppose you buy an expensive course that fails to deliver. If you see yourself as smart and careful, this clashes with your identity. To reduce the inner discomfort, you might convince yourself that the course did help, or that you learned a lot even if there is little real change. You did not just waste money, you invested in yourself. This self-protection can stop you from admitting a mistake and moving on. Instead, you may double down, buying more from the same person, just to avoid feeling inconsistent. So what is the escape from this trap? You cannot and should not remove your desire to be consistent. That would make you unreliable and unstable. The goal is to direct that desire carefully. One powerful shift is to move your loyalty from past decisions to current truth. In other words, be consistent with your values, not with every old choice you made under different information. Make it a core part of your identity to update your stance when reality changes. You can tell yourself, "I am the kind of person who changes direction when the facts change." That way, breaking with a past commitment is not a sign of weakness. It is proof that you are living up to a deeper value. A practical step is to treat each decision as independent, especially when someone tries to link it to what you said or did before. When you hear, "But you said earlier that you wanted this," pause and think, "That was then with what I knew then. Right now, does this choice still make sense?" Allow yourself to answer freshly. If not, give yourself permission to say, "I know what I said earlier, but I am updating my choice based on what I see now." That sentence can feel uncomfortable to say. It may annoy people who are counting on your automatic consistency, but it will also protect you from being dragged along by your own past. Spot the early stages of the foot in the door effect. When someone asks for a small favor, a small statement, or a harmless label, look ahead. Ask yourself, how could this be used later? If a group wants you to sign a simple petition, think about what future requests might come wrapped in that action. If a coach wants you to post publicly that you are starting a life-changing journey, notice that this public claim could later make it harder to admit if the program disappoints you. Saying yes is not always wrong, but it should be done with your eyes open. Also, be careful with how you talk about your identity. Strong identity statements like, "I always finish what I start," sound noble but can trap you. Some projects, relationships, and paths deserve to be dropped. A more flexible identity might sound like, "I finish what I start, unless I discover it is harmful or not worth it." That small addition gives you space to exit bad situations without feeling like you have betrayed yourself. The same goes for loyalty. Instead of, "I am loyal no matter what," you might hold, "I am loyal as long as there is mutual respect and honesty." When others try to use your need for consistency against you, they will often attack your character the moment you pull back. They may call you flaky, weak, or uncommitted. This is not a sign that you are wrong. It is a sign that they depended on your automatic obedience and are upset that it stopped working. In those moments, it helps to silently remind yourself why you are changing course. List the facts. Remember what you have learned since the first yes. Let your loyalty to reality be louder than their labels. Consistency pressure is powerful because it lives inside your own sense of honor. That is why it is so easy to weaponize and so hard to spot. The way out is not to stop caring about being consistent. It is to raise the standard for what you stay consistent with. Past choices are allowed to expire. New information is allowed to matter. Promises made under lies or missing facts are allowed to be reviewed. When you accept that, your past stops being a prison. It becomes what it always should have been. Information, not a life sentence. 8. The halo effect. Falling for the glow, not the facts. Edward Thorndike first noticed something strange when military officers rated their soldiers. If they saw a soldier as physically impressive or neat in appearance, they tended to rate that same soldier higher on completely different traits, like intelligence, leadership, or character, even when there was no real evidence for those things. One positive trait cast a kind of halo that colored everything else. Later research found the same pattern in many areas. Attractive people get judged as more honest. Confident speakers get seen as smarter. People with high status or fancy titles get credited with skills they have never shown. Your brain does not judge each trait one by one. It often lets a single glow spread over the whole person. In modern life, the halo effect is everywhere. Someone has a blue checkmark near their name, and suddenly their posts look more important. A person wears expensive clothes, and your mind quietly upgrades your estimate of their success and competence. A speaker stands on a big stage with professional lighting, and their words seem deeper than they might if spoken in a small room. Stylish Instagram feeds, expensive cars, job titles like executive or expert, and even good looks all become halos. They give your brain a fast signal. This person is high quality. From that point on, you are more likely to excuse their mistakes, believe their claims, and overlook your doubts. Manipulators intentionally build halos. They know that if they can nail a few visible signals, many people will fill in the rest of the story for them. A fake guru might rent a luxury house for a day, hire a photographer, and flood social media with images of wealth. They speak with confidence, use complex words, and stand next to other known figures to borrow their status. A manager at work may dress sharply, speak in a firm tone, and constantly talk about past wins. Colleagues start to see this person as highly competent, even if the actual results are average. Once the halo is in place, it becomes very hard for people to see anything else. Intelligent people are not protected here. In fact, they may be more at risk because they love pattern recognition. They pride themselves on reading people and spotting high performers. When they meet someone who fits their inner template of success, their guard drops. If in the past, confident, well-dressed, articulate people have often been competent, the brain starts treating that pattern like a rule. So when a new person matches the pattern, the smart mind races ahead. This person is probably strong in many areas. Careful checking feels less necessary. Overconfidence in personal judgment joins with the halo effect and creates a powerful blind spot. The halo effect also works in reverse. A single negative trait can create a horn effect. If someone looks messy, speaks with uncertainty, or has a low-status job title, it becomes easy to underrate them in other areas. Their ideas might be brushed off, their warnings ignored, their skills doubted. You might judge their product as lower quality before even trying it, just because the packaging looks simple. In many cases, the person with the weaker halo might actually have better content, but the brain never gives them a fair look. This bias does not only affect how you see others, it also shapes how you see offers and decisions. A startup with sleek branding and a cool office feels more promising than a plain, quiet company, even if the numbers say otherwise. A book with a bestseller badge and praise from famous people feels more worth reading. A course with a high-production video and dramatic testimonials feels more powerful than a simple program taught by a low-key expert. The glow of status, aesthetics, and confidence can easily outweigh actual facts like track record, risk, and real-world results. So how do you guard against the halo effect without becoming cynical about everyone who looks put together? The key is not to ignore halos, but to separate them from what they are trying to cover. A very practical mental trick is inversion. When you are impressed by someone, pause and imagine the exact same words, proposal or offer coming from someone unimpressive, unattractive, or low status. Picture a nervous person in cheap clothes saying what the confident, polished person just said. Picture a boring website with plain text offering the same product. Ask yourself, would this still sound smart, fair, and appealing? If the answer is no, then a lot of your attraction was halo, not substance. Use this with experts and gurus too. When you listen to a speech or a video, focus only on the actual claims and steps being offered. Strip away the dramatic music, the crowd, the lights, and the stories about success. Ask, if this advice were written as a short, anonymous text post, would I still be impressed? Many times what felt powerful turns out to be vague, obvious, or not very testable once the glow is removed. That does not mean the person is useless, but it does mean your rating of them was inflated. In personal life, watch how quickly your view of someone shifts based on small surface changes. Do you respect them more when they get a promotion, even if their character has not changed? Do you trust them more when they show photos of travel or nice things? Do you forgive their mistakes faster because you have already decided they are good or smart? It helps to ask, what specific behaviors earned my trust? Separate from how they look and what they own. If you cannot name clear actions, your trust might be sitting mostly on the halo. The halo effect also means you must be careful when dismissing people. If someone looks awkward or unpolished, their ideas can still be sharp. If a product has simple branding, it can still be excellent. Get into the habit of asking, if this same idea or offer came from a person with a big halo, would I take it more seriously? If the answer is yes, then bias is at work. This question can open doors to value that most people miss because they are staring at glow instead of content. In workplaces, leaders with strong halos can become dangerous if no one checks them. Team members may hesitate to challenge them, assuming they see more than everyone else. Projects that sound good coming from their mouth may get less scrutiny. If you are in such an environment, protect yourself by going back to basics. Look at data, facts, and concrete plans. Separate the person from the proposal. A sentence like, "I respect your experience, and I still want to see the numbers," can help you stay grounded without openly attacking the halo. Remember that halos are not lies by themselves. Often, real skill and real goodness do create a glow over time. The problem is that your brain tends to give that glow away far too early and far too widely. It takes one true trait and carelessly copies it onto everything else. When you learn to slow down, to imagine the same content coming from a less impressive package, and to demand clear evidence before granting broad trust, you are not being negative. You are simply refusing to let shine replace substance. The goal is fair judgment. Let people keep their nice clothes, their stage lights, their status, enjoy good design and confident speech. Just do not let those things decide for you. Make a habit of mentally stripping away halos when it matters, checking what is left, and then putting the glow back on only if the core holds up. That small inner step is often the line between being charmed and being controlled. Time pressure. Killing your slow brain on command? Daniel Kahneman described two main modes of thinking. System 1 is fast, automatic, emotional, and effortless. It handles quick judgments, gut reactions, and habits. System 2 is slow, careful, logical, and effortful. It handles real analysis and deep thinking. Under calm conditions, you can choose to let System 2 step in and check what System 1 is doing. But under time pressure, System 2 often gets pushed out of the way. The brain goes back to shortcuts, biases, and emotional choices because there simply is not enough time or mental space to do more. That is exactly why manipulators use time pressure. They are not trying to beat your intelligence in a fair fight. They are trying to make sure your intelligence never shows up. Think about how many times you have heard lines like, "I need an answer now," or "This call is ending," or "This offer expires in 10 minutes." The moment someone compresses your decision window, your body reacts. Maybe your chest tightens, your breathing speeds up, or your thoughts start racing. That is your nervous system moving into a kind of mini emergency mode. In that state, you are far more likely to agree to familiar patterns, trust confident voices, and accept the frame you were given, because stopping to question it feels dangerous. Your mind wants relief from the pressure more than it wants truth. Time pressure does not always look like a countdown timer. It can be emotional. A partner might say, "If you do not decide by tonight, I am leaving." A boss might warn, "This needs to be done today or the whole team suffers." A friend might tell you, "I really need you to say yes right now. Do not overthink it." These are all forms of the same move, tying your sense of safety or goodness to making a quick choice. You go from asking, "Is this right?" to asking, "How do I make this bad feeling stop?" That shift is where smart people lose control. Manipulators understand that intelligent people are often most dangerous to them when they have time. Given a few hours or a day, a sharp mind can research, ask others, and notice inconsistencies. So instead of arguing with your logic, they attack the clock. They may keep you busy until the last minute, then drop a big decision on you. They may hide important details until you are already under deadline, then present their preferred option as the only realistic path. They may frame any delay as selfish or weak, saying things like, "If you cared, you would not hesitate." The more you value being decisive and helpful, the easier it is to trap you with this. You might think that knowing about this tactic would protect you. But awareness is not enough when you are inside the moment. Under intense time pressure, your brain automatically saves energy by skipping careful thinking. You lean on what feels right, which usually means what is familiar, what sounds confident, or what lines up with your existing hopes and fears. That is why manipulative time pressure often comes stacked on top of other tactics. Scarcity, social proof, and emotional labeling all hit harder when you have no space to question them. So what can you do? The strongest defense is a simple, strict rule. I do not make important decisions under deadlines I did not set. This sounds blunt, and that is on purpose. You need a clear inner line that is easy to remember when your mind is foggy. Important decisions include anything that costs real money, affects your long-term time or safety, changes your job or living situation, or locks you into a serious relationship or contract. When someone tries to force speed in these areas, your default answer should be, "I will decide after I have had time to think, not before." You might worry that this will make you lose good chances. Ask yourself honestly how often in life a truly good opportunity cannot survive a short delay. In most cases, anything solid will still be there tomorrow, or there will be another good option later. The situations where a tiny window is both real and worth the risk are rare. Manipulators rely on you not remembering that. They want you to treat every choice like a once-in-a-lifetime event. Your job is to see through that drama. A practical step is to create artificial time where none seems to exist. Even in a high-pressure moment, you can often buy yourself a small pause. You can say, "I need 5 minutes to think alone," or "I will call you back in half an hour," or "I am going to sleep on this and answer tomorrow." Then stick to that. Use that time to step away from the person or page applying the pressure. Move your body, drink water, write down what is being asked and what the terms are, in your own words. The act of writing slows your mind and gives System 2 a chance to wake up. It also helps to talk to at least one outside person before agreeing to anything big under time pressure. A single external opinion can break the spell. Someone who is not inside the rush can see details and red flags you are missing. They can also remind you that needing time is reasonable, not selfish. If the other side tries to stop you from talking to others, or says things like, "Do not ask your friends, they will just hold you back," that is a serious warning sign. Healthy people do not fear second opinions. In relationships, pay close attention to ultimatums with short deadlines. Lines like, "Decide tonight if you want me," or "You must choose between me and them right now," are less about love and more about control. You are being pushed to sacrifice your thinking to prove your feelings. A stronger response is, "If this cannot survive me thinking clearly, it is not something I should agree to." That answer may upset the other person, but it protects your ability to choose from clarity instead of panic. At work, notice patterns. If certain people always wait until the last minute to ask you for things, then make their poor planning your emergency. That is not an accident. It trains you to react instead of decide. You can start setting boundaries, like, I can help with urgent things sometimes, but constant last-minute requests are not sustainable. Or, I will do what I can within normal hours, but anything dropped on me late may need to move to tomorrow. This pushes some time pressure back where it belongs, on the person who caused it. Finally, understand that saying, I need time, may trigger anger, guilt trips, or fear tactics from those who depended on your fast compliance. They might accuse you of being slow, afraid, or uncommitted. They might try to shame you by praising people who just go for it and do not overthink. Remember that careful thinking is not overthinking when the stakes are real. Your value as a person is not measured by how quickly you can say yes under stress. Time pressure is one of the cleanest ways to shut down your slow brain. That is why it appears in so many dark psychology tactics. When you refuse to rush, when you build the habit of stepping back, even for a short time, you give your intelligence room to breathe. You might still feel the push, the fear of missing out, the urge to make the tension stop, but you will not confuse that urge with clear judgment. That separation is what keeps your choices yours, instead of letting someone else's deadline write your future for you. 10. Loss framing, turning adults into fear-driven children. Kahneman and Tversky discovered something strange about how people respond to risk. In their work on prospect theory, they found that losing hurts more than gaining feels good. In simple terms, the pain of losing 100 is stronger than the pleasure of gaining 100. This is called loss aversion. It shows up everywhere. People will work harder to avoid a loss than to get an equal gain. That is not fully rational if you only look at numbers, but it makes sense emotionally. Your brain treats possible losses like threats. Under threat, your attention narrows, your body tenses, and your thinking gets more reactive. Manipulators know this and use it to turn normal adults into fear-driven versions of themselves. Loss framing is when someone describes a choice mainly in terms of what you will lose if you do not act, instead of what you will gain if you do. The classic examples are lines like, you will lose your chance, you will miss out, you will regret not doing this, or you are throwing away your potential. The facts of the offer might be neutral or even weak, but by framing it as protection against a loss, the manipulator activates your deeper wiring. You stop calmly weighing pros and cons and start trying not to feel that future pain. This can be seen clearly in experiments. When people are offered two versions of the same medical treatment, they often choose differently based only on framing. If a surgery is described as having a 90% survival rate, most people feel okay about it. If the exact same surgery is described as having a 10% death rate, many people become afraid and say no, even though the information is the same. The words make their brain focus on either the gain or the loss side of the risk. Loss language hits harder, so it often wins. Marketers and influencers use loss framing all the time. A gym ad might say, do not let your body fall apart, instead of build strength and energy. A financial pitch might warn, you will lose your chance at financial freedom if you do not join this program now, instead of simply describing possible gains. A course might claim, if you skip this, you will be stuck where you are for another year, wasting time and throwing away your dreams. None of these lines are neutral information. They are attempts to plug into your fear of losing status, security, time, or self-respect. In personal relationships, loss framing can be even more painful. A partner might say, if you do not change, you will lose me. A parent might warn, if you do not follow this path, you will ruin your life. A friend might tell you, if you do not support me in this, you will lose my trust forever. These statements may or may not be true, but the way they are said pushes you into a corner. The focus is not on mutual understanding or shared goals. It is on what you stand to lose if you resist. Your emotional brain hears danger and rushes to make it stop, sometimes at the cost of your values or long-term good. Loss framing is so effective because it hits several deep fears at once. Losing money can feel like losing safety and options. Losing a relationship can feel like losing love and belonging. Losing face can feel like losing status and respect. Under threat, the brain tends to give more weight to short-term relief than to long-term value. That is why people often stay in bad deals, bad jobs, or bad relationships for far too long. They believe leaving means losing everything they have already put in, so they keep paying more to avoid facing the loss that has already happened. Intelligent people often fall hardest into this because they are good at building stories. When they feel loss aversion, they quickly generate complex reasons why staying, paying, or agreeing is actually wise. They might say, "I have already invested so much, it would be dumb to quit now, even when the future return looks poor." This is the sunk cost effect, heavily driven by loss aversion. Instead of seeing lost time or money as already gone, they treat quitting as causing a new loss. Their intellect becomes a lawyer, defending the frightened part of them that does not want to feel like a loser or a failure. So how do you step out of this trap? You will probably never stop feeling loss more strongly than gain. That is built into human nature, but you can change what you do with that feeling. A powerful practice is to flip every loss-framed message into a gain question. When you hear, you will miss out if you do not take this. Ask yourself, what do I gain by waiting? Maybe you gain more information, more savings, or more peace of mind. When you hear, you will lose your chance forever. Ask, what do I gain by keeping my options open? Maybe you gain flexibility and the ability to say yes to a better offer later. You can do the same in relationships. If someone says, "You will lose me if you do not agree," quietly ask, what might I gain by not giving in to this pressure? You might gain self-respect, healthier boundaries, or space for a partner who does not use threats. When a job warns, "You will ruin your career if you leave," ask, what could I gain by leaving something that uses fear to keep me? Listing possible gains out loud or on paper helps your brain see that walking away is not just about loss. It can also be about recovery and growth. Another helpful move is to separate real losses from imagined or exaggerated ones. Ask, what exactly would I lose, and how bad would that really be? People often use huge language, like losing everything or ruining your life, when the actual risk is much smaller, such as losing some money, some time, or a single connection. Those are serious, but they are not the end of your story. When you make the loss specific instead of big and vague, it usually feels less paralyzing. You can then decide if that risk is worth the potential gain. Also, question the person who keeps framing things as losses. Healthy guides and partners can usually talk in terms of both gains and losses. They can say, "Here is what you might get, and here is what you might risk," and then let you choose. Manipulators lean heavily on fear language, bringing up regret, missing out, being left behind, or being alone. If someone rarely talks about positive outcomes without adding a threat, that is a sign that they do not trust the value of what they offer. They trust fear more than truth. You can train yourself to reframe your own thoughts as well. When you catch yourself thinking, "If I stop now, I will lose everything I have invested," pause and ask, what have I already lost by staying, and what do I gain by stopping the damage? Often the real loss happened in the past. Continuing just creates new losses. The brave move is to accept what is gone and choose based on the future, not on fear of admitting a mistake. That kind of honesty hurts for a moment, but protects you from much larger pain later. Loss framing works because it turns you into a child again, afraid of losing something important and willing to do almost anything to keep it. The way out is not to pretend you do not care about loss. It is to widen your view whenever someone tries to narrow it down to agree or suffer. There are almost always more options, more paths, and more chances ahead than fear allows you to see. By asking, what do I gain by waiting, by walking away, or by choosing differently, you remind your brain that life is not just a series of traps to avoid. It is also a field of choices to move toward. That shift, from running from loss to moving toward gain, is where your adult judgment returns and where dark loss framing starts to lose its grip. Your countermove, refusing the frame. Everything you have learned so far has a hidden pattern under it. Anchoring, contrast, placebo stories, emotional labels, scarcity, social proof, consistency pressure, halos, time pressure, and loss framing all have power because of something deeper, the frame. The frame is the silent story that defines what the situation is, what matters, and what your choices mean. It answers questions like, what is the real problem? What counts as normal? What options exist? And what does it say about you if you choose each option? Most people never notice this level. They only notice the arguments and the feelings that happen inside the frame. That is why manipulation works so well. Researchers like George Lakoff have shown that frames shape thought before logic even starts. Say a political debate is framed as law and order instead of civil rights. Suddenly, certain actions seem reasonable or extreme before any facts are discussed. In daily life, a sales talk framed as betting on yourself feels different from the same talk framed as signing a long, expensive contract. The facts may be identical. The frame decides which facts feel big and which feel small, which fears wake up and which stay asleep. Once a frame is in place, all the other tactics are like tools used inside a house that someone else designed. Look at how a manipulator quietly builds a frame. First, they define the problem for you. They tell you that your life, your business, your body, or your relationship has a specific core issue. Maybe you are playing small, full of limiting beliefs, not committed enough, or too afraid of risk. Then they set the boundaries of what normal looks like. Normal becomes pushing yourself harder, staying loyal no matter what, taking big risks, or always saying yes to opportunity. Next, they show you a narrow set of options, usually 2 or 3, that all live inside their story. Finally, they attach moral meaning to the choice. Say yes, and you are brave, loving, smart, or serious. Say no, and you are scared, selfish, lazy, or closed-minded. Inside this frame, every dark tactic you know fits neatly. Anchors define reasonable prices or sacrifices. Contrast makes the chosen option look safer than a horrible decoy. Placebo stories fill your mind with expectations. Emotional labels tell you what you feel. Scarcity and time pressure insist there is no space to think. Social proof says everyone like you already agrees. Consistency pressure ties your past words to their desired future. Halos make them look flawless. Loss framing warns you that saying no means throwing your life away. If you accept the frame, your own intelligence starts helping their plan, because it is now solving the wrong problem with the wrong rules. So the real power move is not beating every tactic individually. It is refusing the frame that gives them strength. That begins with awareness. Step 1 is to name the frame in plain language. In your head, say something like, "They are framing this as a once-in-a-lifetime chance," or "They are framing this as me proving my loyalty," or "They are framing this as a crisis that only they can fix." Do not use fancy terms. The point is to pull the hidden story into the light. Once you can say the frame out loud, even just to yourself, it stops being invisible. You are no longer just reacting inside it without noticing. Step 2 is to ask a blunt question. Who benefits if I accept this frame? If the situation is truly now or never, who gains when you believe that? If the issue is loyalty, who gets to take more while giving less? If the frame is you are broken and I can fix you, who makes money or gains control from you holding that belief? This is not about blaming everyone for everything. It is about seeing the power lines clearly. Many frames are tilted on purpose. They are built so that your fear, guilt, or pride pushes you in the same direction that profits or comforts the other person. Step 3 is to create or choose an alternative frame that fits the facts but protects your freedom. For example, instead of "this is my only chance," you might adopt "this is one offer among many that I can consider." Instead of "this is about proving my love," you might hold "this is about whether this relationship respects both of us." Instead of "this company is my family," you might choose "this is a work agreement where both sides should benefit fairly." Each new frame opens up fresh questions. Under the "one offer among many" frame, it becomes normal to compare prices, check reviews, and take time. Under the mutual respect frame, it becomes normal to say no to unfair demands, even if someone is upset. You do not always have to speak your new frame out loud. Sometimes it is safer to keep it inside and simply let it guide your decisions. If a coach says, "If you walk away, you are choosing fear," you can silently shift to, "If I rush into this, I am choosing ignorance." That interchange weakens the pull of their loss framing. If a boss says, "Real team players never say no," you can quietly reply in your head, Real professionals set limits so they can do good work. Once that frame is in place, their attempt to shame you hits a wall instead of your self-worth. Refusing a frame can feel strange at first, because it often means stepping away from the neat, dramatic story you were handed. Drama is part of the hook. One side of your mind enjoys the idea that this is a defining moment or a test of who you are. The less exciting truth is that most decisions are just that, decisions. Some are big, many are small, and almost all can be adjusted later in some way. Remembering this helps you resist people who turn every choice into a test of your courage, love, or identity, just to rush you into their plan. This is where your intelligence finally becomes a real shield instead of a decoration on your cage. Smart people get manipulated most when they believe that thinking harder is enough, as long as they are being rational. But if the frame itself is crooked, all that hard thinking just builds impressive arguments inside a trap. The real work is earlier. Asking, is this even the right question? And who chose it? Instead of asking, am I brave enough to buy this course? You ask, is this course good for me at all? Instead of asking, am I loyal enough to stay? You ask, is this relationship or job honest and healthy enough to deserve my loyalty? Small change in words, massive change in power. You will never be fully immune to manipulation. No one is. These tactics are built into how human minds work. You will still feel anchors pull you, scarcity rush you, halos impress you, and lost language scare you. That is not failure. The real difference is this: instead of trusting the pull, you start to question the frame behind it. You notice when someone is racing your clock, narrowing your options, or tying your worth to agreement. You slow down. You step to the side. You let your intelligence work on a reality you chose, not a script that was slipped around you. In the end, dark psychology only wins when your attention stays where the manipulator puts it. The final countermove is simple, but not easy. Move your attention from their problem to your real problem, from their deadline to your timeline, from their labels to your own words, from their frame to a frame that serves your long-term life, not their short-term gain. Once you start doing that, even a little, you stop being easy to handle. You stop being an ideal target. You become someone who can still be influenced, still be human, but not quietly controlled.